The First Soldier was definitely an interesting game, if nothing else then for being a spin-off title that no one really expected to be made, nor a premise that anyone was imagining the well-established Final Fantasy franchise to branch into. But if you really stop to think about it, of the Final Fantasy settings, 7 would be one of the titles more suited to a traditional battle royale, as the existence of firearms, super soldier projects, and an urban-like environment lends itself well to the trappings of the genre. Fresh off the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it would have made sense to create derivative works using the existing assets, and so Square Enix put mobile developer A-Team to work, creating a game using the Midgar map assets and the combat animations of its playable characters. The result is this unique hybrid battle royale game. Not quite pure shooter, not quite Final Fantasy RPG, but an esoteric blend of the two. Did it work out? Well, that's subjective, I suppose. There are examples of battle royales that aren't as focused purely on gunplay, and the genre is ever diversifying even to this day with different twists on it. But one can definitely say that this battle royale, for better or worse, was its own thing. If you're looking for more info about the creation of this game and its developers, the good folks over at Final Fantasy Union and Nerdslayer Studios have lovely videos covering that. Give them a look, they're great. We won't be getting into the state of the studios or the game all that much here. The focus of this video will instead be on what the game was like while live and what its updates contained, from its first launch season to its eventual shutdown. Due to the transient nature of live service games, I guess this should serve as the next best thing to preserve its history. So before we get into the update history of First Soldier, it'd probably be best to talk a bit about what the game actually played like. As advertised, it's a battle royale game. 75 soldier candidates are dropped into a section of Midgar, a circle of Mako gas gets smaller, last man standing wins. Lore-wise, this is meant to be the selection process for the Soldier Project, taking place in a VR training environment as depicted in Crisis Core. On the timeline of the compilation, this would take place pretty much the earliest of any of the pieces of media. And that's pretty much the extent of the story, with what little there is being followed up as a special chapter in Ever Crisis. When you first start the game, you get quite a few customization options for your player soldier candidate. You can pick between male or female body types, a number of hair and eye colors, and voice options. The soldier candidates have quite a few options to move around the map. Running, crouching, jumping, crawling with a gun equipped, and aiming down sights are your typical actions for a battle royale game. You can also run up walls by jumping directly at them, and vault over obstacles. Benches provided places where you could heal by sitting at them, and vending machines offered chances to purchase or upgrade equipment. Locked vaults were also present, where if one found the randomly dropped keys somewhere in the map, one could reach these places and open them to access some nice gear. Players can pick up gear on the map, like in typical battle royale shooters. You have 2 gun slots and 2 accessory slots to provide various buffs. There's a slot for your potions, which heal health over time on consumption, but will stop healing if you take damage before it completes. You also have 3 slots for materia, letting you have 3 spells you can use depending on what you find. Materia starts at level 1 and increases in power the more materia orbs you collect. For example, fire upgrades to Fyra, which further upgrades to Faraga. Summon material has its own dedicated slot. Players also start matches at level 1 and can level up by defeating enemy mobs scattered around the map, opening chests, surviving each wave, or by defeating other players. Temporary missions could also be picked up while in-game, directing players to defeat specific enemy mobs or players, or opening a certain number of chests. Leveling up improves the player's max health, as well as their job abilities. More on that later. Enemy mobs and opponent candidates have a stagger bar, and dealing enough damage to fill it will stagger them, letting you use a limit break on them to finish them off. Gil can also be dropped by monsters and found in chests, which can then be used on vending machines to buy new equipment or upgrade currently held ones. While every candidate gets access to the above, you also get to pick from a selection of FF jobs. These have different active and passive abilities that will change the gameplay quite a bit. At launch, you had 5 jobs. Playing as each job would grant job experience, letting players unlock more of the alternate abilities each job had, and to customize the loadout slightly, as well as some job-specific cosmetics. First, you had Warrior, whose melee combo is based off Cloud's combo in Remake. The Fearless Charge trait allows melee lock-on at further ranges than other jobs, and had damage reduction while dashing in for the melee strike. For your active ability, you had a choice of Punisher, which temporarily buffed your running speed and your melee damage and range, or Rush, which granted you an additional armored dash that could be used whenever you wished, as long as it was off cooldown. For the passive ability, you could choose between Threaten, which slowed enemies that were being hit by melee combos, Survivor Spoils, which restored health when eliminating another player with a melee attack, or Counter Shield, which created a small shield object between you and an opponent when you took damage. The limit break for this job is Braver. Secondly, you had Sorcerer, whose combo is based off Air's combo in Remake. The Magic Boost trait boosted damage done with materia and caused additional effects with the Fire, Blizzard and Thunder materia. The player's MP also recovered faster. For your active ability, you had a choice of Trance, which granted a buff to MP recovery speed and movement speed, temporarily increased all materia held by 1 level, and reduced the MP cost required to cast spells. Or Arcane Field, which plays down a magic field where players get increased recovery MP speed and cooldowns. For the passive ability, you could choose between Precise Casting, which allowed materia to have a chance to crit, Etheric Drain, which restores HP when you damage monsters and other players with materia, as well as reduce the MP recovery time every time you take damage, or Reinvigorate, which boosts health restored from all methods other than consumable potions. The limit break for this job is Siphon Sphere. Thirdly, you had Monk, whose melee combo is based off Tifa's combo in Remake. The Inner Strength trait grants the ability to regenerate a percentage of any damage taken, represented by Grey Life. Once per life, if you hit 20% health, you basically get a Tekken-style Rage bonus, which allows health regeneration regardless of Grey Life, increased movement speed, and critical hits on all melee attacks. You also get a cool new dive kick move to close the gap while in this mode. When the buff expires, you won't get it again until you level up, at which point the buff is refreshed. For your active ability, you had a choice of Mana Wall, which deployed a barrier that blocks damage, or Chakra Field, which places a field on the ground where all players standing in it will restore health. For the passive ability, you could choose between Leech Fists, which granted some health back based on damage dealt with melee attacks, Chakra Unleashed, which instantly restores some health when it drops below a certain threshold, and Awakened Strength, which increases the recovery speed and percent of health regenerated from Inner Strength. The limit break for this job is True Strike. Fourthly, you had Ranger, who is mostly original, though sharing a weapon type with Barret. The Ammunitions Expert trait grants increased space for ammo per inventory slot, as well as the amount of ammo obtained from pickups on the map. Reload time is also reduced compared to other jobs, and no damage fall-off is applied to guns. For your active ability, you had a choice of Assess, which scanned the immediate area for targets and materia traps. Other players could see the scan roof. Or Control, which gave the player a slug ray drone to control, letting them view some other part of the map and do some light damage if they wished. For the passive ability, you could choose between Acute Sense, which revealed scope flashes when an opponent was looking at you, Silencer, which reduced the firing sounds of guns except unique guns, or Sniper's Eye, which marked enemies that you damage or held in your sights for long enough. The limit break for this job is Deadly Dive. Lastly, you had Ninja, who basically served as an early preview of Yuffie, though she would go on to have different animations. The Acrobat trait allows players to double jump, including after parkour. For your active ability, you had a choice of Blade Shift, which lets players throw a knife and teleport to its location if it hits a target, or Hide, which made the player almost invisible, other than a flickering flame, though unable to perform other action. For the passive ability, you could choose between Lightfoot, which reduced footstep noise, Retreat, which increased movement speed on taking damage, or Escapist, which increases movement speed while in the hazard zone. The limit break for this job is Flurry. Returning to Materia for a moment, the following were available at the launch of the game. Fire, which lets you throw a fireball that explodes on contact with an opponent or surface, doing big damage on contact and some splash damage near it. It upgrades to Fira and then Firaga, increasing damage. This magic can cause friendly fire damage. Blizzard, which sets an ice turret that targets nearby enemies and shoots icicles at them. It upgrades to Blizzara and then Blizzaga, increasing damage and durability of the turret. Thunder, which casts an AoE spell that damages everyone standing in it. It upgrades to Thundara and then Thundaga, increasing damage and size of the field. Originally, this spell caused friendly fire damage. Bio, which throws a lingering cloud that would poison anyone who walks into it, causing damage over time and preventing healing from potions. It upgrades to Biora and Bioga, which amplifies the poison damage. Aero, which sets a gust of wind on the ground that dealt damage. Players who hopped into the whirlwind after the initial casting would be propelled high into the air, acting like a jump pad. It upgrades to Aurora and Iroga, increasing the damage and size. Cure, which instantly healed an amount of health centered around the caster, compared to Potion's slow healing over time. It upgrades to Kiora and then Kiraga, increasing the amount of health restored. Blind, which sets up a smoke cloud that obscures visibility. It upgrades to Blind level 2 and Blind level 3, increasing the size of the cloud. Gravity, which sets a trap that would detonate when a nearby enemy walked into it, heavily slowing their movement and preventing them from doing any actions other than walking. It upgrades to Gravega, which makes the effect bigger. And lastly, Comet, which was a massive high damage AoE nuke, capable of locking down an area for a period of time. There was also a team's only materia, Raise, which revives a dead teammate. As to summon materia, 2 were available at launch. All summons had their own health bar and could be shot at by other players to remove them from play. Summons also deactivated once the final circle was reached. Ifrit, when summoned, would follow you around, attacking nearby targets with a variety of powerful strikes. Shiva, when summoned, would create a massive snowstorm centered around herself. All players in the area would be slowed and take damage over time, the summoner included. Several types of firearms were available: pistols, SMGs, LMGs, ARs, sniper rifles, and shotguns. These could come in several rarities like most other items, and could be upgraded at specific vending machines. The type of ammo they take are divided into 3 types and would be stored in separate inventory slots. There were also some special guns that only came in a single rarity and were usually rarer, and might only appear in supply drops or drop from bosses. Most of these could not be reloaded beyond the ammo provided with the gun. As mentioned, 2 accessory slots were available to each player, which would provide additional passive buffs. These could range from increased gold drops from defeating mobs, healing over time when not in active combat, reduced footstep noises, and so on. These also had different rarities, and the better ones might only appear from supply drops of bosses. For transporting yourself across long distances, you could either find the motorbike, which sat 1 player, or the utility vehicle, which could sit multiple players, helpful for teams. You could run someone over one of these for damage, and in the case of the bike, you could also use a spin attack at fast enough speeds, like Cloud did in the original game. Alternatively, if you came across a chocobo stop, you could call a chocobo to ride. Chocobos were surprisingly in-depth, and could be hatched and bred to have different stats, including attack strength, running speed, jump height, and so on and so forth. Chocobos could run, jump, and perform a chocobo kick as an attack, which did massive damage at launch. Jump kicks would home in on nearby opponents as well. Chocobos could be dismissed, which would cause a cooldown period before you could call it again in another stop, but this would return the chocobo at full health. If a chocobo lost all its health, it could not be called again for the rest of the match. Moving along, these are the mobs you can defeat for drops in experience, in between fighting other players. You've got the basic hedgehog pie enemies, who try to run into you and attempt to steal your gold. You've got bombs, who breathe fire if you're standing near, and shoot fireballs if you gun them down from a distance. You've got cerulean drakes, who cast aero spells and breathe ice. You've got slug rays, who zip around and shoot bullets at you. You've got Tonberries, who hang around double chests and will teleport next to you and attempt to stab you, bringing you down to 1 HP. You've got Sweepers, mini-boss enemies with powerful saw blade launcher attacks and dangerous spin attacks. And lastly, there were boss monsters. A single one of these had a chance to spawn somewhere on the map and would be announced to all players when they appeared. The lone boss monster at launch was the Scorpion Sentinel, with bullet barrages, missiles, and the famous tail laser. Defeating it gave a lot of experience and a ton of good equipment drops, but one had to watch out for other players nearby trying to take advantage of the chaos. The game launched with Season 1, Rise of Shinra. Throughout the lifespan of the game, cosmetics would be continuously added to the in-game store, some directly purchasable, and some via gacha banners. 4 cosmetic slots were available: the head, torso, pants, and back, as well as equipable emotes that could be played on the waiting screen, on the victory screen, and while in-game. The body customization could be freely accessed at any time, as could the voice options. In addition to player cosmetics, the player's chocobo's, vehicles, helicopters, banners, and guns could also be customized to look different. A battle pass was available at the start with free and paid tracks, consisting of cosmetics and currency that could be used in the in-game store. The battle pass could be leveled up through regular play, as well as the usual dailies and weeklies that come with the territory. Notably, you would unlock the next battle pass by reaching a high enough tier, allowing players to skip paying for the next season's pass. Each season also had a set of cosmetics that could only be attained by exchanging items that would drop from defeating mobs, incentivizing regular PvE play during the Battle Royale sessions. The season also launched with a rank mode, with 2 separate queues for solos and teams. Ranks went up to Soldier First Class upon meeting certain point thresholds, and above that was Soldier Prime, only for the top 500 ranking players. Rewards like special banners and skydive trails were available for reaching those ranks. 4 special guns were available at the start of Season 1. The Buzzsaw Launcher, which fired powerful saw blades that penetrated through targets and could stick to surfaces where they would continue to damage players who ran into them. The Bomb Launcher, which could be used to suck up bombs that were low on health and turn them into ammo for powerful fireball shots. The Polestar, the powerful laser-shooting shotgun that Ruthless Shinra used. And the Cyclops Roll, the most powerful sniper rifle in the game, capable of downing any player with a single headshot or into body shots. When the game launched on the 17th of November 2021, to put it lightly, the game was quite broken. Technical issues plagued the servers, and getting a full game completed without being kicked to the title screen or crashing was rare. The game did have the very cool feature of reserving the player's slot in the game and letting them continue if they were able to reconnect in time, but it was still a band-aid fix for the constant issues. Support for controllers was present, but heavily lacking in configuration settings. These issues would be slowly improved over time as patches came by. The first of these patches dropped 12 days later on the 29th of November, which, along with some fixes and adding gyro support, also added the second boss monster to the game, a mysterious shadowy figure resembling Cloud, spawning in a dome of whispers. Shadow Cloud, or officially 3 question marks as the game calls him, utilizes remake attack strings, could enter Punisher mode to reduce incoming damage, casted Faraga for long distance damage, and could hit players with the powerful cross-slash limit that will kill any player not at full health. It will be quite an ordeal to take him down, but the reward for defeating him was very much worth it: the Cloud Mimic materia, letting players transform into Cloud and play as him. Cloud was extremely powerful compared to the regular soldier jobs he could play as. He had a fast running speed and could air dash as if he was in Dissidia. He also had access to a unique set of attacks and magic. 6 days into December, First Soldier celebrated the holidays with a thematic event. The title screen would become quite festive, and gift boxes would spawn in regular games. These gave temporary missions to deliver gifts to trees around the map, which would add decorations to the title screen and grant some unlockable rewards. Midgard's slums also became decorated for the holidays for the duration of the event. On the 17th of December, a patch was released to address some of the balancing issues the launch game encountered. Chocobos were nerfed in general, their health and attack being reduced and their stamina drain increased. Wing flap indicators were also added to indicate direction of mounted players. Sniper rifles were nerfed, blizzard durability was reduced, and thunder no longer caused self and friendly fire damage. Fire was made more useful by its cloud-penetrating walls, blind's cost was reduced, though its cooldown was increased, and Arrow had a shorter cooldown in exchange for the wind lasting shorter. Lastly, bombs and cutters had their damage reduced, so they stopped wrecking players, and the Cerulean Drakes lost their damaging ice aura when knocked down. On the 28th of December, another balance patch was issued. Warrior, which had been dominating, had the power of its melee attacks shuffled around, with the first two hits doing much less damage and the third hit containing the bulk of the damage. Ranger's Assess was buffed to have much larger range and had its effect last longer. Monk had its melee damage buffed, Inner Strength now also provided a movement speed buff, and Mana Wall could no longer be walked through, in addition to having more barrier health. Ninja's Hide was made less useless with its flame indicator now blinking instead of always being visible, and the ninja could now pick up and use items while invisible. Gravity was also buffed to affect chocobos more, and they now completely disabled actions, including materia and style actions. Lastly, credit for boss kills were now distributed by reaching a minimum damage threshold rather than only dealing the killing blow. On the 18th of January, one last tuning patch was released. The fire spells, which had since become very effective, had their direct damage and splash damage reduced. Chocobo Kick was nerfed further specifically against other players, though it also had its damage buffed against enemy mobs. Friendly Fire used to award experience and kill credits, this oversight was fixed. And Blizzard was buffed, going from 2 MP to 1 MP. The 20th of January saw the first competitive event called the Precedence Cup. Players competed for max kills and fastest match wins, and banners were awarded to participants and for leaderboard placements. On the 31st of January, a small Valentine's event took place. Cactuar spawns were increased and event items were purchasable with gear. Subsequent events would iterate on the format and use event-exclusive currencies rather than normal gear. In the last event of the season, on the 16th of February, the game celebrated the 25th anniversary of the original Final Fantasy VII game. Polygon versions of the Cactuar and Scorpion Sentinel replaced their original counterparts, and Polygon MP soldiers were added to the map. The original battle music also played over these encounters. Polygon character skins were also made available to redeem with event items, as well as from the gacha. On February 28th, Season 2 saw the release of a new job in Dragoon, which may likely be an early preview of how Cid will eventually play in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The Sky Predator trait allows players to glide after jumping from a high altitude, as well as dive bomb from the glide. For your active ability, you had a choice of Dragon's Favor, which applied a buff that increased movement speed, as well as absorbing MP and HP on melee attacks, while inflicting a bleed effect on attack targets. Or High Jump, which let players do a high jump into a glide. For the passive ability, you could choose between Dragon's Ire, which marked players who damaged you, losing MP if they were attacked while marked, Wide Swing, which increased melee attack range on consecutive attacks, or Aerial Wall, which reduced gun damage taken from lower altitudes while gliding. The limit break for this job is Boost Jump. Bahamut was also added as a new boss monster, though he acted rather differently compared to other boss monsters. Instead of having a mutually exclusive chance to spawn sometime into a match, he would always be present in the skies above the lower plate, flying around and occasionally landing at certain points, at which point he could be fought. Throughout the match, he would fire off Mega Flares while in his flying phase, aimed at a randomly chosen player. Bahamut would have a boss barrier around him when he was on the ground, which was also added to all other boss monsters. Damage from outside the barrier wouldn't be able to get in, and damage within wouldn't be able to go out, though two players both inside the barrier could still damage each other. Defeating Bahamut would grant a powerful summon material of the same name, actually allowing the player to turn into and play as Bahamut for a period of time, using his powerful attacks with impunity. A new materia and two new special guns were also added. The teleport materia allowed players to place an entry and exit portal for quick traversal, which would remain on the field for a period of time. And two Bahamut-themed weapons were added, the Flare Thrower, a powerful flamethrower weapon, and the Inferno Cannon, a laser cannon that could be fired either with homing shots or a powerful concentrated beam. Both could drop from Bahamut, but could also be found randomly in special Bahamut chests scattered across the map. Sniper rifles were given a nerf with damage fall-off, and in particular the legendary Cyclops Raw Sniper was made much rarer. Conversely, SMGs were buffed, and Rangers were given a nice boost as well, with them and only them not having damage fall-off with sniper rifles. The accessibility now revealing HP in addition to position, and the drone's self-destruct damage being buffed. Monk got a small rework as well, with a different and more powerful melee combo when in their inner strength mode. On the 17th of March, Bahamut Fury from Crisis Core replaced regular Bahamut. This guy had more powerful attacks and his weak points were changed around compared to regular Bahamut. Boss barrier surrounding him now not only disabled damage from passing through, but also made it such that players inside the barrier could not hurt each other. Cooperation was the name of the game in order to take down this raid boss, and of course the all-out chaos immediately after it was defeated. A few balance changes happened with this patch as well, with Gravity getting its immobilizing range nerfed after it proved too effective, Chocobo Kicks getting further nerfed against players, and Bomb Launchers having the splash damage radius reduced. On the 31st of March, the Easter event began. Players could find eggs around the map by riding on chocobos and investigating specific spots only visible on them, which would reveal either equipment or unique monster spawns. These would drop special summon materia, namely the Grangalan and Hakuta summons. The 27th of April will once again have a Bahamut variant replace the regular Bahamut spawn, this time being Bahamut Sin from Advent Children. Like with Bahamut Fury, he was quite a bit stronger than the already strong Bahamut, and his boss barrier disabled player versus player damage. On this patch, private matches are also made available to the community ambassador players, though this feature would never be made public to regular players. Functionality for private matches was a bit basic at this time, but would be expanded upon in subsequent updates. Some small balance changes were made as well, such as Blizzard's targeting being made more reliable. 10th May marked the half-year anniversary of the game, and a celebration event was added to the game. Medals were collectible that could be obtained from supply drops and lying around the environment, and they could then be deposited in banks in certain locations for some powerful items. Unlockable cosmetics were also made available through event missions. On the 20th of May, a unique collaboration was added. J-Rock band Man with a Mission was commissioned to create a song for the game, The Soldiers from the Start. And to commemorate the occasion, the members of the band were added into the game as on-field bosses, complete with their usual stage costumes. For the most part, they acted like souped-up player characters, some using melee combos and some using guns. They appeared in groups of 3 across various parts of the map, and defeating them would net you some nice resources and equipment. The song written for the game played over these encounters as well. In the final patch before Season 3, on the 25th of May, a new mode was introduced. Blitz mode was a 3v3 capture the point mode, taking place on a unique map in the Shinra building lobby. At the start of the round, each player could choose their job, then had a selection of weapons, accessories, and material they could purchase with their starting currency, kinda like Counter-Strike. Teams would take turns to attack and defend, each side swapping after the round. The first team to win 2 rounds would win the match. To adapt the gameplay mechanics for this mode, health and mana restoring items were made available on the map, and guns were given infinite ammo. Players who were defeated would respawn again after a period of time. The mode was available to play until the 2nd of June, as its own separate matchmaking playlist. On the 2nd of June, Season 3 saw the release of a new job in Machinist, likely an original class with no FF7 counterpart. For your active ability, you could pick Air Gadget, which allows players to summon a hoverboard that could be ridden for quicker travel. It used the same controls as the VII Ghost, could accelerate with a nitro boost, and could also fire homing projectiles. Hopping off the hoverboard would send it flying forward, exploding and doing damage on contact with enemies. Alternatively, you could pick the Jamming Gadget, which would set up a turret object that generated a field. Within the field, all players would be unable to use guns and would take damage over time. The Machinist player could also self-destruct the gadget to cause damage or cancel the effect. The support gear trait tied into the above gadgets. Every time you used your main gadget ability and subsequently destroyed it, it will give you one Gradius-like option that would orbit around your player. Up to 3 could be stocked at a time, and the effects depended on your passive skill. For the passive, you could choose between Shooting Gear, Healing Gear, or Blast Gear. Shooting Gear would shoot together with your main gun at whatever target you were aiming at. Healing Gear automatically restored some health when you hit a low enough threshold depending on your level, and Blast Gear would fly forward and explode on enemy candidates who damaged you at a close enough distance, knocking them back. The limit break for this job was Grand Strike. Season 3 also saw the release of the second Battle Royale map, the Sector 7 Upper Plate, or Plateside. This map was a bit smaller than the lower Midgar map, and as such was a 60-player map instead of 75. New enemy mobs were made available on this map, namely the Security Officer and Guard Dog enemies. A new material was also added to the game in the form of Water, which upgrades into Watera and Watergar. These were tracking water projectiles that could be shot around corners after locking on, either with a left or right curve. The upgrades increased the number of water projectiles fired in a row. 2 new special weapons were added: the Serpent Launcher, a rocket launcher essentially, and the Dual Wheeler, a new type of gun that took a third type of ammunition called Mako rounds. The Dual Wheeler could either shoot like an assault rifle or be charged to shoot like a shotgun. Special accessory chests were also added to the game alongside regular chests, which would contain only a single but guaranteed accessory. New accessories were also added alongside this, including the Ifrit belt, which instantly reloaded your gun and granted a damage buff on defeating another player, the Drain belt, which restored some health whenever you did damage with a specific gun, the Shiva bangle, which slowed enemies who you were shooting, and the Bio bangle, which poisoned enemies you shot. Also added were the Fire Ring, which reduced damage from fire spells by half, the Blizzard Ring, which reduced damage from Blizzard by half and also negated the slow effect, and the Thunder Ring, which reduced thunder damage by half and negated the flashbang effect. There was also the Star Pendant, which granted immunity to being poisoned, and the Talisman, which increased MP recovery speed. The Cat's Bell accessory's healing potential was buffed, while the Shelter Ring's effect was reduced from an immunity to explosions to a 50% reduction. The Jewel Pendant and Lightweight shoes were removed entirely from rotation, as well as the Bahamut weapons and chest. Shiva was also removed from rotations, likely for rebalancing, though she was never returned to the game before it closed. A few other balance changes were made, including being unable to melee lock on through blind, Ifrit's tracking on his attacks being improved, and the final ring shrinking completely after some time rather than endlessly relocating. On the 17th of June, a Crisis Core collab event began. The DMW system from that game was implemented, giving a slot roll every time the player dealt enough damage and granting various buffs depending on the views. These included improved movement speed, increased crit chances, and HP recovery among others. The DMW system was only present in standard games and was not present in ranked. Zack's Buster Sword also started spawning somewhere on the map in each game, and picking it up transformed the player into Zack. He had his own moveset and is similar to the Cloud Summon, but with a few different special attacks. From the 7th to the 18th of July, Blitz Mode returned with many new features. The main gun was no longer fixed per class and could be swapped, and accessories could now be purchased. Team color was applied to visual effects to better differentiate what belonged to each team. Oh, and Machinus was banned for the mode since the map was really small. Rankings were also added for this period. 19 July saw a summer event taking place, called Surf of the Water God. Locker keys spawned on the map, which could be taken to the newly placed lockers around the map, letting players change into summer swimsuits, each with the effect of an accessory attached to it. Taking too much damage would break the swimsuit and return you back to your normal look, losing the buff. The Mako Gas Zone was also turned into a Water Zone, with the same damage effect, but if you had swimsuits on, you would take less damage in the zone. Water God medals were also scattered around the map, which could be picked up to be exchanged for cosmetics as usual. In addition, fountains were added at various locations that would launch players high into the air when passed over. After the summer battle, these were kept and changed into jump pads with the same functionality. Along with this update was an update for Private Battle, allowing custom rules like changing what equipment would spawn, ring speed, and many other options. Ranger was also buffed with faster reload speeds as a new passive skill, and Machinist's air gadget was buffed as well. On the 9th of August, another small event was held called the Shinra fireworks display. Headband-wearing bomb fireworks appeared around the map, which could be picked up and placed in firework launchers. After the fireworks were launched, weapons and material would be dispensed for the player. Controls for vehicles and the Machinist's air gadget could also now be customized in this patch. The 24th of August brought a completely brand new mode into the game called Variant Mode. This was an asymmetrical game mode of 9 regular players fighting against 3 variant players. Each team had a power gauge and the objective was to reduce it to 0. For the soldier players, defeating the variant players would force them back to the respawn menu where they had to pick which character to play as, each with different costs to the power gauge. In this way, they would reduce the variant's power gauge. There were also generators on the map that could be attacked and destroyed by the soldier players to massively reduce the variant's power gauge. Soldier players had the standard moveset and could make use of any of the equipment scattered around the map. Meanwhile, the variant players could reduce the soldiers' power gauge by felling them in combat. They had a choice of various powerful enemy mobs including a slug ray, a bomb, a Kektar, Bahamut, and the legendary hero Sephiroth himself. Each had unique movesets and could recover health on defeating soldiers. As they were very powerful, it would likely take focus fire from multiple soldiers to take them down. As the match goes on and enough damage is dealt to the variant team, the game would spawn special rocket launcher weapons called demolition launchers. These had a much higher damage multiplier when used specifically on the generators, and would massively help the soldier team towards their goal, leading to some push and pull in the game mechanics. The mode was available for a week and left the game on the 31st of August, just in time for the next season. Late August also saw the first, and only, official tournament for the game, with a North American and a Japanese tournament streamed on Square Enix's official channels. Season 4 saw the release of a new job in Trickster, likely an original class with no FF7 counterpart. The gold trick trade allowed players to earn free gil from leveling up, while also increasing the critical rate of melee attacks and the cooldown of abilities based on the total amount of gil the player accumulated over the match. For your active ability, you had a choice of Decoy Card, which created a doppelganger that would stand in place and shoot at nearby targets with whatever gun you had equipped when casting it, though only at quarter damage. The doppelganger's HP increased with your level. Alternatively, you could pick the Marking card, which would use half of your current HP to leave a card at your location. If you subsequently hit 0 health while the card was still active, you would teleport back to that location with its health returned to you. The card would disappear if it took too much damage, if 30 seconds passed, if you wandered too far from it, or if it ended up in the hazard zone. You also couldn't get XP, use vehicles or chocobos, or use benches while it was active. For the passive ability, you could choose between Seize, which increased the gil drop from defeated monsters, Soul Drain Deck, which granted MP back on using abilities, and Drain Shot, which, on landing hit shots, restored a portion of the damage to the player's HP. The limit break for this job was Card Rush. Maps were also given some changes with the new season. The plate side map was expanded to a larger size and would now accommodate 75 players per game. Meanwhile, the lower plate received 2 new locations of interest called the Golden Saucer Battle Square and Golden Saucer Wonder Square. At the Battle Square, players could defeat enemy spawns and get chance reels, which would give items with the reels lined up. Likewise, at the Wonder Square, players could destroy numbered boxes to trigger the same chance reels. Powerful enemies and bigger boxes had a higher chance for better rewards. A brand new material was added, the Tornado material. This casted a blast of wind that would remove lingering magic like Gravity, Blind, Bio, Blizzard, Thunder, Aero, and Teleport spells. 2 new weapons were also added. The powerful Gil Toss Gun, which uses Gil as ammo, and the Chimeric Vengeance, a macro rifle with an alt-fire laser mode that consumed MP. Lastly, a new type of vehicle was also added, the Sports Car. Alongside the usual balance changes, the 2 Bahamut weapons were re-added to the game, now exclusively dropping from Bahamut. From the 21st of September to the 12th of October, Variant Mode returned. The number of playable maps expanded from 2 to 4, with the new ones taking place on the upper plate. A new materia was added for the mode called the Invincible Materia. As a rare drop from supply drops, it grants the user temporary damage and knockback immunity. Monks and warriors now started a match with that materia in their inventory, while other jobs started with fire, blizzard or thunder. All classes also now started with level 3 weapons. The variant team meanwhile had some stat readjustments and now got more health back on defeating soldiers. And lastly, more of the special guns were made available for use in this mode. In between that period of time came a major update patch on the 30th of September. First, a number of balancing updates and reworks were made. The melee lock on reticle now appeared at all times even without a melee weapon out. All jobs received a rework to their abilities. The warrior's countershoot passive was replaced with critical ending, which increased the chances of a critical hit on the last hit of the melee combo. They could also now perform fearless charge without their melee weapon out. The sorcerer's reinvigorating touch passive was replaced with staggering touch, which allowed them to deal stagger damage with materia. The monk's mana wall and chakra fields were combined into chakra mana wall, which also featured a 1.5 times bigger shield compared to the original. A new one was added called Vigor, which buffed the player with reduced damage, immunity to knockback, and increased healing effect from inner strength. The ranger's control was replaced by Scout, a different controllable slug ray that could now mark a nearby target, then fly towards it and attempt to explode for damage. The ninja's escapist passive was replaced with Poison Shuriken, which inflicts poison on the third hit of their melee combo. The dragoon's aerial wall passive was replaced by Urgency, which reduced other ability cooldowns when landing melee hits. The Trickster's decoy card was also slightly nerfed, with the doppelgangers no longer targeting players through blind. Other than the reworks, controller customization was finally added in this patch, allowing you to remap controls if you were using a Bluetooth controller. The Cloud Mimic material was also added to variant mode, allowing soldier players to transform into Cloud. And lastly, a brand new feature was added to the main Battle Royale mode, Chocobo Time Trials. These were small racecourse time trials that could be triggered by entering a gate while mounted on a chocobo. 9 of these courses were added to each map for a total of 18, with various difficulty levels. Completing a time trial would award some equipment. On the 12th of October, the news finally came that the game would be ending its service in January 2023. The remaining planned updates for the season would be rolling out, but beyond that there would be no more major updates. The Halloween event started on the same day, with Zombie mode taking over the Battle Royale mode. Clouds of gas will be present on the map, and running into them turned you into a zombie. Zombies had a different moveset, with a degraded warrior melee attack and a zombie spell attack that throws a cloud. Either of the two attacks, if connected on an opponent, would turn them to a zombie as well. Zombies could not use equipment nor pick anything up, but would regenerate health slowly over time if not taking damage. If all remaining players were zombies, all zombie players are considered to have won the match, essentially opening up an alternate victory condition. A new summon, the Halloween Grangalan, also appeared during the event, as well as candy pickups that could be traded in for cosmetics. On the 1st of November, the first half of the first year anniversary event began. Cloud and Zack Mimic materia were made available freely, without any glitch fields for bosses necessary. You would be unable to transform if you had an active summon like Ifrit, and they wouldn't appear from chance reels, but otherwise they could be freely obtained on the map. Special supply drops also appeared with lots of loot, and a zone surrounding them in which you would recover health over time. Lastly, anniversary medals were scattered around the map, which could be picked up and traded in for cosmetics. The second half of the anniversary event began on the 15th of November, featuring Ultimate mode. In this mode, everyone starts with levels and weapons fully upgraded, increased MP recovery speed, and air dashes like Cloud and Zack. All weapon spawns would be at epic rarity or higher, and all materia were fully leveled. Uniquely, abilities belonging to other jobs could spawn as materia, allowing players to mix and match. Lastly, multiple supply drops would happen at a time, and movement speed when stuck outside the circle was increased. This was basically a silly turbo mode, and a pretty fun final mode to finish the game with. The 30th of November saw the final season, to each battlefield, run for the remaining month until the game's closure. Players were gifted a lot of tickets to be used on the cosmetic banners as a final gift, which were all made available for access. Players could also view the graduation notice, essentially a letter of appreciation and a small hook to the future of the narrative content to come in Ever Crisis. And finally, on January 11th, 2023, the game finally came to a close. Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier was far from a perfect game. It remained to the end, to a degree, a bit janky in its execution, and being tied to mobile platforms only, while also being quite a technically demanding game, meant not a lot of people got to experience it, and for those who did, not everyone liked it enough to stay around for its entire lifespan. But for those players who did, like me, will always have the fond memories to look back on, like running around as a chocobo, teaming up to kill Bahamut, or hauling every bit of material we could find and putting it inside 7 Heaven. Godspeed, you crazy soldier candidates, and we'll see you in Ever Crisis. Thanks for watching this recap of the lifespan of First Soldier. If you like my content, do feel free to click the usual buttons, I guess. I'm always working on more gaming content stuff, and I'm always grateful for the support. Right then, I'll see you around.